arrogant millionaire leaves, pregnant wife for mistress. Years later, she returns with a baby secret. From the moment James Parker first laid eyes on the glamour and grandeur of high society, he wanted it all: money, power, and freedom. But ambition can be dangerous, especially when it eclipses matters of the heart. In this gripping story, we witness the downfall of a once happy marriage as James's arrogance drives him away from his pregnant wife, Addison, and into the arms of a calculating mistress. Years later, Addison reappears without warning, holding a baby in her arms and harboring a secret that threatens to unravel the entire Parker dynasty. Brace yourself for betrayal, redemption, and unexpected twists at every turn. James Parker was born and raised in the bustling suburbs of Westchester County, where immaculate lawns and stately homes betrayed both wealth and deep-rooted family politics. His father, Edmund Parker, was a well-connected real estate developer who specialized in refurbishing historic properties across the East Coast, including a landmark deal in Charleston that, for a time, made headlines in the New York Times. James was brought up in a world where extravagance was the norm, where people measured success in zeros on a check and in the names one could casually drop at dinner parties. Even as a young teenager, James exhibited a talent for negotiation and a taste for extravagance. In high school, he drove a sleek Mustang while his peers struggled to pay for used cars. At the age of 19, he made his first major business deal by flipping a derelict apartment building his father had handed over to him as a learning project. Over the course of 2 years, James cultivated that small real estate flip into a thriving enterprise. By the time he was 25, James had garnered the reputation of being the next big thing, a golden child in the real estate world. It was at a gala in downtown Manhattan that James first laid eyes on Addison Sullivan. She was a recent graduate of Columbia University, planning to become a journalist. Unlike the women James typically courted, those dazzled by his fortune, Addison was thoroughly unimpressed by his flashy lifestyle. When James tried to charm her with stories of private jets and lavish vacations, Addison simply smiled politely, sipped her champagne, and gently redirected the conversation to less boastful topics. For James, her indifference was electrifying, a challenge he hadn't experienced. It compelled him to chase not just her attention, but also her approval. Despite her initial skepticism, Addison eventually recognized there was something more to James beyond his bravado. He exhibited genuine curiosity about her aspirations, her passion for investigative journalism, and her small-town upbringing in Rhinebeck. On their first official date, James swapped out his Lamborghini for a borrowed Ford sedan, taking her to a cozy family restaurant in her old neighborhood. They spent the evening talking about their dreams, with James envisioning an empire built on real estate acquisitions, and Addison describing her desire to uncover stories that would actually change lives. Love blossomed quickly. With Addison by his side, James found himself focusing more on philanthropic endeavors. He even invested in a scholarship program at Addison's alma mater for aspiring journalists. Addison, for her part, started to see James not as a smug heir, but as a wounded soul who had rarely known simple, unadorned affection. Before long, they were engaged, then married in a grand ceremony at Edmund Parker's estate, replete with antique crystal chandeliers, string quartets, and a guest list that read like "Who's Who in East Coast business." In the early days, their relationship was a formidable partnership. Addison balanced James's flashy risk-taking with caution and empathy. Meanwhile, James's confidence helped Addison break into the media world. She landed a job at a major publication, The Ledger, under the mentorship of Patricia Moncrief, a seasoned journalist who had famously exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud scandal in the city. Addison's career trajectory looked bright, and James's business acumen soared to new heights. They presented a powerful image of a modern couple, driven, supportive, and, seemingly, deeply in love. Yet cracks in their facade started to form as James's ambitions grew unchecked. With more money came more demands. He expanded his operations, purchasing plots in Los Angeles, Miami, and even overseas in London. Addison grew busier as well. Her responsibilities at the newspaper pushed her to chase leads for major investigative reports. Their weekend getaways turned into phone calls from different time zones. Breakfast at home turned into James grabbing coffee on a private jet. A sense of distance settled between them, although they tried to ignore the warning signs, attributing it to being a power couple forging their own separate paths. The seeds of trouble were planted in these busy days. James had always thrived on recognition and applause. Addison's time was increasingly consumed by her budding career rather than being his unwavering cheerleader. Each business success for James demanded yet another, bigger triumph. As Addison advanced, she found herself hungry for the autonomy and respect that came with her new roles. She no longer wanted to be introduced merely as James Parker's wife. Meanwhile, James wasn't prepared for a partner who might compete with or overshadow him in any way. They were still a team on the surface, but the tension grew, unspoken, invisible to outsiders who saw only the expensive suits and the magazine spreads featuring their philanthropic endeavors. Deep down, Addison began to suspect that James was changing into something far more self-centered and ego-driven than she ever imagined. But whenever she attempted to bring up her concerns, James would brush them aside with a dismissive grin and an extravagant gift, be it a diamond bracelet or a sudden trip to Paris. When Addison asked for emotional support, James offered material comfort instead. She felt placated but never truly heard. Little did Addison know that even those fleeting moments of her husband's genuine attention were about to evaporate, sending her on a journey from hopeful partner to abandoned wife, pregnant, alone, and betrayed by the man who had once vowed to protect her above all else. The unraveling of James and Addison's marriage began slowly, like an ominous storm creeping in from the horizon. Amid business trips and late-night meetings, James frequently entertained clients and attended numerous galas without Addison, who was often chasing high-profile leads for her newspaper. During one of these lavish events in Miami, James crossed paths with Charlotte Wilson. Charlotte was a public relations maven well known for sculpting the public images of wealthy entrepreneurs, sometimes papering over controversies with a wave of her manicured hand. She radiated a cunning charm, the type that made people feel special while never fully revealing her own secrets. Like James, Charlotte had spent her life around affluence. She knew how to navigate power dynamics, and more importantly, she recognized the vulnerabilities of the overly ambitious. James found her refreshing, at least initially. Unlike Addison, who was increasingly vocal about the moral implications of his acquisitions, such as displacing low-income families to build luxury condos, Charlotte championed every bold expansion James made. She flattered his ego. She admired his relentless drive. She never asked him to slow down or reconsider. It wasn't long before he began to rely on her for PR strategies, hooking her into his day-to-day business dealings under the guise of growing the brand. Over the following months, Addison sensed the shift. James had started to mention Charlotte's name with casual frequency. If Addison asked about his day, his grin would flicker whenever Charlotte's marketing success came up. Subtle hints and expensive perfume lingering on his suit jacket, suspicious text messages, timed conspicuously with Addison's absence, only served to feed Addison's growing suspicions. Still, She convinced herself that James would never risk their marriage for a mere fling. They had invested so much in each other, how could it all topple over a seductive PR consultant? Yet Addison's illusions disintegrated one cold December evening. She came home early from work, thrilled to share the news that she was pregnant. She was trembling with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, imagining their future as a small family. Opening the front door of their penthouse, she froze at the sight of Charlotte's coat hanging over the arm of the living room couch. Before Addison could set down her keys,